I'm going to suggest, since we are going to be sending this out, that when we normally ask you to give your name and your address, just give us your name, please, because we have the documents and we know we're talking to Wyoming residents. And with that, we'll move on. Bethany Williams is first on my list. 3 minutes. We haven't passed that, that's in tonight's policy. We're gonna codify it, so we haven't codified it yet, so go for it.
Bethany Williams. Sorry, I actually was not planning on speaking, but Kim got here and got the movement to do it. So I don't actually have anything prepared. Sorry, I'm probably gonna get emotional because this is something that's really dear to my heart. Sorry. I want to bring up concern about math and the resources that we have. Sorry. I have a third grader who struggles, not enough to qualify for special ed necessarily, but math is a struggle. He loves school, math is hard. I've been told, and this is no knock on our teachers, I love our teachers who are providing significant, wonderful tier 1 intervention. However, this is the second year I've been told that there are no tier 2 there are no title services available, title math services available at Elm. They're apparently at Hilltop in Vermont, title math is available. I do understand that is a funding through the government and there's a whole equation on how that works. However, I know my son is not the only person at Elm who's struggling in math. And when I'm told that there is nothing else at this moment we can do besides tier 1 interventions in the classroom, that's not okay with me. Legally, I work in special ed also, and I believe legally there needs to be available resources for tier 2 and tier 3 if needed. Again, not a knock on the teachers. And I think our principal is doing a wonderful job picking up pieces that she didn't want to, I mean, that's not her problem. She is doing the best she can. And she realizes that there is a gap. I've had communication with her. So I know that she's doing, but I don't know if I can go a whole another year without services beyond tier 1. Granted, if tier 2 is really needed for him, which I believe there is, I know that there's a process with that, but I just have concern about maybe how we are spending money when we don't have those resources available apparently. And I look at the math report card from the middle school, 8th grade was at 43% drop down. I believe 5th grade was at 67% from the report card. I have the thing on my phone, but that's going to trickle down and you have the kids coming up into middle school that, how are we going to improve that? When I see that we're spending, and again, like I said, I wasn't fully prepared. The wind just kind of got me to come speak. And when I see or hear reports about spending $20,000 on consultation for other things at the high school or for the district, yet we are neglecting math. I think that's a huge problem. And I'd like to know how are we going to get those services for our Elm students or any other school in the elementary level who are struggling with those, because it's hard. We as parents do everything we can to help support, but it really falls on the school at that point to provide those services for him that he's not getting or the other students may need.
You're going to share a lot of time.
I'm sorry.
You're going to share a lot
Oh,
of time.
well, there we go.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Mr. Weber, you have that?
I do.
Okay. All right, thank you. Sandra Anderson.
Hello.
Hello.
I first want to compliment you. I'm thrilled that you're all sitting here, and I'm very happy that things turned out the way they did. And one of the candidates that didn't win asked me, she said, I know you moved to Wyoming for the schools. And so how are the schools, how's it going for you? And I have a 5th grader now, and I said, extremely well. So keep that in mind as I say what I'm about to say. I'm very happy for Maya and how things are going for her. I have kind of an overriding concern, what I heard before when we were contemplating moving to Wyoming. I have 2 adult daughters and we adopted Maya. It was a God thing. So, 'cause not many people are our age and raising a 10-year-old. But my older daughters both have muscular dystrophy, and we lived in upstate New York then. And so we looked for, where's the good schools when we moved there? Where's the good schools for kids with disabilities? So that's where we ended up. When we were coming here, Maya is in the gifted program. So, where's that? Well, this is a good place for kids that are gifted. But if you have a child that has special needs, don't come to Wyoming. And so I just wanted to share that because even though I don't need it now myself, I still have a heart for people, for children or parents who have kids with special needs. And I would like to think our school wants to bring everybody up as high as they can go. So that's pretty much it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Rhonda Evans. I'll pass that down.
My name is Rhonda Evans, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about the meeting we just had, community conversations, and how encouraged I am by those conversations, because I think we got a lot done because they were structured in a way that anyone from any side could say what they had to say. And I would just encourage the board to turn that information around as soon as possible and redistribute it. And I would even suggest that you have more conversations like this, so more issues can be brought out and we can address them in a methodical way. Sort of like some of the issues that came up tonight that are really important. And you can also share with the community that there are committees that are addressing that for the curriculum, and you can answer their questions specifically in case maybe something comes out that you didn't think of. And I'm just really encouraged about how we're starting this process and the participation from all sides. Not just because that, like I said, you keep the communication lines open, and you have more things like this regularly to hear from them and give them an understanding of where their suggestions are being funneled to. Because I think it'll give them a little more confidence, and it will give them more of a feeling that we are trying to address some of these issues. And if we're not, that then we become aware of them, that we are doing something about it. That's all.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Mr. Weber, you're going to talk about a little bit about the
I will
conversation
speak to
this
the
evening?
community conversation, yeah.
Okay, all right, so we'll get a little bit out of what we've just heard
Yeah.
this evening. Okay, good. All right, besides the fact that I am freezing, but that I know that doesn't mean anything. We now have a special presentation, and I would like to introduce Carol and Amanda are doing this together? And Emily, okay. No Mel, okay, sorry, I have wrong info. Okay, sorry. If you will introduce yourself, tell us all what you're doing, and then this is going to be a presentation about our use of the Research and Innovation Center,
Dan Jones Center for
also
Research.
known as the Dan Jones Center for Research and Intervention. All right, innovation. We've got intervention, now we need it. All right.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Amanda Bamonte, so I'm the media specialist at our Dan Jones Center for Research and Innovation. Joining me tonight is Carol Metter, one of our social studies teachers, and Emily Cowan. We're going to be just talking with you a little bit about how we work together as a team to bring curriculum, creativity, and collaboration to our students and our staff. We also have another member of our team, Melanie Wyatt. She was actually supervising the DC trip with this senior, so God rest. She couldn't be with us this evening. And then Emily is an instructional design coach with Forward Ed, so she plays an integral role in our RIC team. We're going to talk just a little bit about a couple of projects that we've had the opportunity to engage in the RIC. The first one here Andy Lyon is an English teacher, and he teaches 10th grade world literature, and his students read Born a Crime. And he came to Mel and I and said, you know, I want to do something different for an assessment. My kids do a lot of essays, and, you know, that's great, right? We want our kids writing, but I know that they can do something hands-on. I know that they can show me their passions and their learning in a different kind of way. But what does that look like? Okay, so we just started brainstorming with him. He would bring his students down to do some work. Mel and I would meet with him, and we just chit chat about, well, what did the kids work on when you were reading it? And what are you hoping that they'll do in the end? And so throughout that collaboration process, we helped him come up with a prompt that his students could unpack, where they were demonstrating their knowledge of the book, but also their connection to that piece of literature. We came up with some project options that the students could choose from, always, of course, incorporating something that was completely like a wild card, where the students could choose anything that they came up with. So we used tools like Canva and Tinkercad, and we really worked with him from start to finish on this. When the students came down, before they came down to the RIC, I went into his classroom. I'm a former English teacher, and so I went into his classroom, I read this book, and he and I worked with the students on just brainstorming what they would do, right? Like, what was their connection to the book? What do they remember about the book? Like, what were those pieces? Did they want to look at theme? Did they want to look at setting? And then what were those connections? And so we kind of worked with him and the students on that in the classroom. And then they came down to the RIC, and Mel was able to work with them on, okay, you have this great idea, you have this great connection. Here's all these awesome tools. What can you create to show that? Okay, so she showed the kids Tinkercad, Google Drawing, Adobe Illustrator, all the cool things that we have in the programs that we have available. The kids came down each day, and it was great because they had 3 adults to help them with this process, right? So we could each help them with designing, with prototyping, with revising, whether they were working in the fab lab with the laser cutter, or if they were working on a piece of poetry. Each of us had something that we could contribute to the students, and so it was just a really great example of collaboration. In the end, the students just wowed us, okay? They came up with sculptures, poetry, puzzles that they made with the laser cutter, drawings of their own. So the things that, and this is just a small sample, right? I mean, the things that they came up with were incredible. And they did presentations with Mr. Lyon to show their learning to each other, right? So they had that shared piece too. In the end, Mr. Lyon does a really great job of asking his kids to reflect on their learning. And so he asked them a series of questions about what helped them and what were their advantages and what didn't they like and all those kinds of things. I won't read all these to you, but I will highlight just a couple things. One student, there was some freedom, which gave you both a sense of responsibility and allowed us to do something that we chose. This allowed us to improve our enjoyment and quality of work. I think my project turned out better than expected. Usually I get really overwhelmed doing big projects like this, but thanks to Mr. Lyon and the ladies in the RIC, thanks for shout out, my project came out great. It was the first time I really had to think outside the box. I love that one. That was my favorite one. Working in the RIC was helpful mostly because of the space, but I think the change in scenery helped create a more open-minded environment. And we hear that a lot from our students, right? Just kind of getting out of the usual classroom really just kind of frees them up in some way. And then I do have a little sound clip from Mr. Lyon, if we're able to play that.
This Born a Crime project really just rejuvenated me as an educator. It was so rewarding to see students so dedicated and creative in their outlets that they chose to create their final products. I think the project showed me that having less structure and more choice allowed students to do some deep thinking and some critical thinking and some personal connections, which was really cool. I really love to see the kids excited about something in school, especially when it pertained to a book that was required to read. Overall, I just really appreciate it was an all hands on deck approach to make this project be successful. I really couldn't have done it without the consistent encouragement and help that Mr. Money and his wife showed and gave to my students.
So with Mr. Lyon, you know, he came in with, what can I do? Here's what I'm hoping, what can I do? And then we have teachers like Mrs. Metter here, who they come to us and they're like, this is my project, right? Here's my spec sheet. How can you help support my kiddo? So I'm gonna let Mrs. Metter come up and talk a little bit about her experience in the RIC. Thank you.
Okay, so many things to share with you. When Dr. Whiteley was my assistant principal and then principal, and actually, I don't know if you remember this, once in my evaluation, she said, let's talk about differentiation. You do great things, you do exciting things for kids. I want you to focus on differentiation and see what you can do with that. And being kind of the pleaser that I am, I said, okay, what do you want to see? Tell me how to get the A. And in that way, I'm so much like so many of our kids. And she said, okay, you've got lots of choices. You can do process, you can do product, or you can do content. And to me, that was a whole lot of choices, but that was the seed that my Holocaust project grew out of. Because why do we all have to learn exactly the same thing? I am blessed to have a social studies course that is the very best content, in that I have 20th century, all of the amazing events that have shaped not only our own country, but the entire world. And because the Holocaust is such a personal topic for everyone, whether your family was touched in some way. For me, both of my grandfathers served, one in the Pacific, well, both of them were in the Pacific. One was in Hiroshima as the first wave of Marines on the beach. My other grandfather was a radio man in the Pacific. So from hearing kids telling all these kinds of stories, I knew this was the one that I wanted to see the most amount of differentiation. And so what I say to the kids is, I want you to pick a topic and I want you to pick something positive. I think sometimes it feels like when you watch the news, it's the bad news all the time. And I said, we've all seen enough of the horrors of the Holocaust. I want you to pick a story that moves you and inspires you and asks you to be a better person. And so I say, and I don't want to have to say no to you. So pick a good topic and pick something that is going to be fun for you. Play to your strengths. If you're not a tech kid, don't tell me that you want to build a website. Tell me how you can show off your skills. Oh, wow. And so then the way this works is they all sign up for a day and they are presenting their projects. And so it's not chronological or anything like that. It's just who signs up for which day. And every day I'm running down between classes to the Rick and saying, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe this one. And running the projects down, showing them. Then the next bell, oh no, wait, a different one. It's better than that first one. So bringing this one down. When you look at the ones that are up here, I had a student who wanted to share the importance of recipes and how we show love in the way that we cook, how we share stories in the way that we cook, and what role food played in a time when food was scarce, to bring people together and to give them hope and to let them share culture. And so he pulls together all of these pictures and then he works with Mel to do these on the laser cutter. And these are all etched into wood. Then he finds a recipe from the time and cooks it and brings it to class and shares it with the rest of the kids. So, you know, all you have to say is share the food and the kids all get excited. But all of this history to go with that, first, I would never think to put that together in the way that he did it. But second, he's a kid that loves to cook and he loves history and he's got some family connections. And this was a great way to play all of those things together. Today I had a student, this was the last day of presentations. Tomorrow we're going to the Holocaust Museum and they have closed the museum to the public. So only our own students will be there and we'll have the full run and all the docents to be working with us. So today was the last presentation then. And the end of the day, we had 3 very different but unbelievable projects. One of them was what we call, by we, I mean the kids in my class, a flashlight box, where you kind of build a cutaway like a diorama. You shine the light on the top and it highlights a specific scene. And so for this student, I said early on, what would you like to have as your topic? And she said, I'd like to do Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. Yeah, if that's not a book that you're familiar with, it's maybe because you're not a Holocaust scholar. I mean, this is the book that I didn't read until I was an adult. And when I read it, I'm reading it with other source material and thinking, ooh, this is kind of a weighty book. Yeah. So she creates, she takes Viktor Frankl, who was an Austrian scientist and a philosopher, and he essentially tells the story of how he made it through the Holocaust, focusing on 3 things: the love for his wife, the belief in quality work and relationships that you build with other people. And she created 3 different boxes that showed scenes from his life and how that impacted her, and then in her own life. And I said, how did you build those little figures? She said, oh, I got some special clay and I cooked them in my oven, her own oven at her own house. And then I painted them and then I put them together like this, and I went outside and found some bark, but I wanted to do the walls, but still make it simple. It's this unbelievable project that never in a million years would I have thought to say, please do it just like this. But by giving her freedom and access to these amazing resources in this beautiful space, the kids are turning out projects like I have never seen before. And the day before, let's see, that was Friday in 7th L. Now, imagine these are 15 and 16-year-olds, 7th L, so they're tired, they've been busy all day long. One of my students brings a board game that he designed to teach people about the ethical, scientific principles that come out of the Nuremberg Code at the end of the war, okay? And the first question, almost in unison, that I get from my students, do we get to play it? Sure. So we sit down and for 20 minutes, they're learning and teaching each other about the ethical principles of the Nuremberg Code. These are high school kids. I could go for hours and tell you about these projects because they're so unreal. In my women's studies class, we talked about what does it mean to be a woman? And what data do we draw to tell the story of women? And how do we look at positive elements? How do we look at challenges? How do we recognize that we are all so different, but have great stories to show and to share? Mel says, how about Canva? Why don't we do an infographic? So the kids are working with data and working with good sources. So not just a random blog, but how do we know if a source is a quality source? And Amanda is right there with them saying, let's try this, look at these different tools and tests. And they came up with, again, amazing work that spoke to all of their own strengths and interests, but it also kind of cracked open the door for them to see experiences of women maybe beyond their own circle of friends. We just got finished, and those were the projects on the left. We just got finished doing a new one that I have just done for the first time this year. And that was, we all know famous women. We can all name famous politicians or famous actresses or activists. We're good at that. But if we say, who are some strong women in your own neighborhoods, in your own greater city, everyone wants to vote for their mom, and that's awesome as a mom, that feels good. But who else do you know? We don't have to go to Washington or to Hollywood or to New York City to find women doing great things for our community. And so they researched women in Ohio, all different kinds of women, women in theater, women working in different elements of science, women trying to, as a second career, share the history of our area. All different kinds of issues with child poverty was one of the, a really, really good one. But they all shared them, and they used Canva again to create different kinds of visual elements. And the contest was called Woman of the Year. So which of these women should be honored as Woman of the Year for all of the contributions that she has made right here in our own city and right here in our own state? And so I have to say that I was lucky enough to be part of the Dan Jones Center from the very beginning, when we were back just talking about, in a perfect world, what could this look like? And when it was finally unveiled, I mean, there are so many times that I just go in there and walk around on my plan now or in the morning because you just feel calm there. And there's so many things going on, and the kids are engaged and they're excited. And it's a different space, but in a way that makes you feel like, okay, I'm ready to go. Now, what can I come up with next? They love, the kids call it the RIC. They love to go to the RIC. They love to work with the team. And I have to say that the projects I've seen this year, I think speak to a couple things. The beauty of the space, the fantastic ability of our team, but also, and this is important, I think sometimes when you look at education on the news and you hear people talking about, oh, you know, the pandemic has just sucked it out. My classroom is just no fun anymore. The kids don't want to be here. That's not happening in our school. The kids are excited. They're glad to be back. They're happy to be working with each other, and they are ready to learn at every step. So it's a good time to be me. I have to say that. I've got the best job, and I appreciate every day, all of the support that you guys give us, because the kids are so amazing. They are just, I got a good job. So thank you.
So I'd like to introduce Emily Cowan. She's gonna come up and, oh, we're gonna do some student questions. Sorry, forgot about this. Want to hear from our kiddos.
My name is Owen Bailey. I feel like this year it's a lot better because we have like all these opportunities and just like a place where you can go and kind of be calm and work and like all the different types of things that we have for like uses, like we can 3D print, we can laser cut, all this kind of stuff is like, it's just an opportunity that I never thought I'd have. And it's nice to have these in case I need them anytime during high school.
My name is Avery Betts, and I think the RIC is really useful because it's helpful for projects. And I use like the green screen room, and I use the Fab Lab for certain social studies projects, and I just found it super helpful.
My name is Ava Crubb. My experience in the RIC has been really good. I come here almost every day for study hall too, and I think it's just a really good, like, kind of workspace just to get out of like normal classroom vibe. So I come here every day to do my homework, and I think it's really great that we have all these opportunities like 3D printing and laser cutting. I'm using the laser cutting for my project in Metter, and I think like all these new resources just helps like elevate my project, and I think it's very nice to have this space. We are doing a Holocaust project, and I'm studying a Viktor Frankl, who is a psychologist during the Holocaust, who wrote a book, and I'm using the laser cutter to make these flashlight boxes, and I'm going to create scenes through the Holocaust in. So yeah.
My name is Gabe Whitland, and my experience working in the RIC has been great. I really enjoy the small breakout rooms, especially for women's studies. When we've worked in small groups on projects, we've been able to collaborate with other people in our class to work on those projects. And I really enjoy the vinyl printer in the fabrication lab to print out our most recent poster project for Women of the Year. Thank you.
So we had a ton more, but you know, alas. So I'd like to introduce Emily Cowan. So we said before, like with Mr. Lyon, he came down, we didn't really know what he wanted to do, so we kind of helped him work through that. Mrs. Metter comes down, she knows what she wants to do, but how can we make it better? What supports do we have? And then we are so fortunate to have Emily with us, and so she's going to talk a little bit about how she plays a role on our team and brings the rest of us in.
Thank you. Like she said, I'm an instructional design coach, and I support the entire district. So I am in all 5 buildings. So I don't have the luxury of seeing all of these projects up close and personal, but I am really excited to share one that Louise and I have been working on, as well as the others in the RIC. I am sorry, but it's a little bit half-baked and that we are literally in the process right now, so I don't have the really shiny final products to show you today. So like she said, a lot of our teachers start by coming down to the RIC and saying, I want to do something. I want to get my kids down in this space. I want to get them creating. And that's typical for Mel and for Amanda. But for me, it's a little bit different. Because of my limited time in the high school, I have coaching cycles going on. So I have a handful of teachers who sign up to work with me on an ongoing basis. And our first meeting is generally what I call a break jam. So tell me all the things that aren't going great in your classroom. If you could redesign your classroom, what would you want to see happen? What is missing? And we kind of go from there. However, if you're familiar with Louise, similar to Terrell, she has in mind what she wants to do. She brings it to us. She's a dream big kind of gal. And this year, her personal growth goal was to bring more authentic learning opportunities and assessments to her students. And she said, I think you might think I'm crazy, but I want to put Monarchs on trial. And I am not someone to tell you you're crazy. I am someone to be your hype girl. And if you want to put them on trial, we're going to put them on trial. So my role in this was kind of identifying what do students need to know? What standards are we trying to address? What objectives do we have ahead of us? And how are we going to get that to our students? So Louise had already had a choice board, but together we revamped it. So you can see on the left, this is just a glimpse of it. And what we did was try to bring some more creativity and critical thinking to the students while they were working in the classroom. So for different monarchs, they had different options. And some of the templates she used, she had to create a Pinterest board you could have chosen to create a Pinterest board for the monarch of Spain. So that gets students really thinking about what would that person pin? What would that look like? My favorite was to create a Yelp review. We all know that those can be really funny and we can find ourselves in a hole laughing at those. So it really got students thinking about what would someone say about this monarch. And then in my conversation with Louise, it's not just about me. Like I said, I kind of float everywhere. So I have been adopted so kindly by Amanda and Mel. And I am constantly looking for ways to bring them in so that we are all a team and collaborating. And so with that, we brought Mel in, and that's happening, I think, the week when we get back from break. Students will be in the RIC and they'll be creating evidence for their trial. So we were like, how can we get them down there? What can we have them do? And so they'll be creating whatever evidence that they want to bring into that final assessment that is a trial. And then, of course, students, Louise can give them the content that they need, but they're going to need so much more to actually be able to put them on trial, to set up the defense and the prosecuting team. So that was an obvious way to bring Amanda into that space. And so she set up an absolutely fabulous lesson for the students. It lasted about a week, I believe. And they took on the role of a detective and made learning how to research fun. And so they did a lot to prepare for the trials that will be taking place in about 2 weeks. So they will literally have a prosecution, a defense, a monarch will be put on trial, and then those who are preparing for the other monarchs will actually be the jury. And so there's going to be a lot of great conversation and really interesting results. And Louise couldn't be here tonight, but you can see here, she said, this is a quote from her, having a new team to collaborate with has re-energized my teaching practice. Emily and Mel hopped in to collaborate on bringing the mock trial idea to life. They supported the process of connecting classroom instruction to elements of meeting instructional goals, incorporating design and making, and suggested pulling in Amanda for research. So this is just one example of the ways that we've supported each other and supported our teachers to bring more authentic learning to our students.
So we hope that in those brief little snapshots, you were able to see what we're working hard to achieve and bring to our students and our staff in the Research and Innovation Center. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That was exciting. Anyone want to ask questions?
It's not questions, it's just comments. So thank you. It's like exciting to meet, remember, and don't you feel like, at least for me, when I see those, I love like project-based learning and hands-on learning. So to see that diversification of it is so exciting to see it come to life. And thank you we've been looking forward to that, just seeing the projects, and good job. It's fun to see that the diverse ideas that the kids come up with, too, I'm sure.
Absolutely, thank you.
And I love the teacher reflections, that kind of idea, if you build it, they will come. You know, the idea that, we've always said in the high school, we feel like the kids need more, I'm speaking more as a parent than a board member, maybe more freedom. And I think it was Andrew Lyon that said he's seen that kind of giving them more freedom and more choice has allowed for some deeper learning and critical thinking, which is, and you reflected that as well. So great work. Thank you.
Awesome. And I'll say, I love the idea of this incredible space, a collaborative team to brainstorm what opportunities there are for our students, and then students that are excited and who, given the right conditions like this, flourish in ways we never anticipated they would. And to build the stream, really, science, technology, research, engineering, the arts, mathematics into their learning is really exciting. It's really exciting. And so, yeah, it's growing. The excitement is growing. We talked early on about this space being for every student. And so it's about growing this space to make sure that every student has access to the great experiences that you're in.
So come back in a few months and do
Oh,
it
yeah.
again.
Thank you, we're happy to.
This is a completely irrational, not even request, it's sort of a contemplation. Because I was listening to you speak, Carol, I was like, she really likes her life. As you were talking about the projects and the things the kids are doing, I was trying to figure out how did the things happening in this space become visible, or people in our district are aware that that's what's happening in our high school. I think you may have mentioned, like, people feel like we just lost all the stuff on the education since in the pandemic. This is very encouraging to me, very engaging as it relates to how this space is getting people in English, kind of just engage very differently. So I don't know if it's more of an administrative thing with Dr. Whiteley or Tim. How do we find ways that we share these kinds of things that are happening with people in the district? Just if they wanted to check it out, if they wanted to go on the website and have a student presentation shared on one thing that they built or created or whatever. It's not a prescription, more just a question. It just seems interesting to have more people in our district see some of the cool things, that are happening.
Absolutely.
And I like too that it's not just a space, a physical space. It required some additional staffing, and it's just great to see you in action. So, thank you.
Thank you. We'll let you go home. It's a school night.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you.
We're going to switch from curriculum and to economics now. Here, so we're gonna.
I always have the incredible fortune of following the most dynamic, engaging student presentation of the year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's a
if
tough
you're
one.
expecting that again, I will apologize. Maybe I should go to the rec and spend some time.
Yes.
Working,
Presentation.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Can you find this in a different, you use a shadow box?
Yeah. It is probably before we get started on the 5-year forecast presentation, a good time to remind folks that the rec is the result of significant private donations. So thankful for our partnership with the school foundation
Absolutely.
and the private donors that supported the construction and so much of the technology that is involved in that incredible space. So shout out to the foundation and the donors for that, the structure that allows all of this incredible work to happen. So with that, we will transition to the general fund 5-year forecast. And I think Ashley is going to drive for me. All right, so we'll just hop right into it. So just a few reminders that the 5-year forecast is a requirement of the Ohio Revised Code. The Boards of Education twice a year adopt and review and adopt a 5-year forecast. So while it is a statutory requirement, we use it as a tool. We review it every month at our finance committee. We use it, we have benchmarks along the way that guide our financial planning. I think everyone knows that financial stewardship is one of our goals. And so that is the tool that includes so many of the other structures that we have in place that feed into the 5-year forecast. So that helps us as a tool to accomplish our financial stewardship goal. Mechanically, it includes 3 years of historical revenues and expenditures, 5 years of projections, so this year and 4 more. It is a general fund only report. So when we think about all of the other funds that are included in the operation of the school district, in these meetings, we give updates on the permanent improvement fund or student activity funds, or like the foundation donating funding to the construction of the RIF. Those are not included in this forecast. So this is a general fund only document. And of course, the underlying trends are important. This is definitely more difficult in a pandemic environment. And there are some elements of continued uncertainty, but we continue to model based on the best data that we have available. We'll jump right in and start talking about revenue. As you can see on the pie graph there, real estate taxes, that's our most material revenue source. So we get most of our money from real estate taxes. And so when we think about what's in Wyoming and we look around, what do we see in Wyoming? We are a bedroom community. Our real estate taxes are not generated by commercial industrial tax base. Our real estate taxes are paid by homeowners because that's what compromises Wyoming. And so when we think about real estate taxes, Wyoming last passed it's our last operating levy in May of 2017, an 8 mil operating levy. And so there are 2 components on the bottom of that. And I had to sort of layer them to be able to get all of the years on there. When we think about how property values generate revenue, you multiply that times the millage. And so what most folks want to make sure, or what I want to make sure most folks understand is that the strength of our property values and the ability to generate revenue remains very strong. We went through our last reappraisal cycle in 2020, saw a 13% increase overall in property values. So, this continues to be an incredible school community. We even heard some examples tonight. People move here to come and attend Wyoming City Schools, and the strength of our property values reflects the strength of our school district. So without any additional operating levy, property taxes will be flatlined over the life of this forecast. So most of our revenue comes from property taxes, and those are homeowners because we don't have any businesses. Of course, we have some businesses, but not a strong business community here within our small 2.8 square miles. Our next most material revenue source is income tax. And so when we think about our total funding, we are a locally funded district. When you think about income tax and property tax, that makes up the majority of our revenue. And so income tax has been one of those areas that has been impacted by the pandemic and is impacted by other economic trends. And so we have two income taxes, one that was passed in 1989, one that was passed in 1994. So we're currently collecting 1.25%. That is the school district's income tax percentage. We had been, when you look at the history of our income tax collection over the past 20 years, it averages out of about between 2 and 2.25%. And so that was really what was driving our forecast. We had been sort of aligning the increase based on our trend. And so then the pandemic hit, and we actually, because of the uncertainty of the pandemic, had forecasted a decline that materialized in a 0.74% decline, so nearly a flat line in fiscal year 21. And then we have seen a little bit of a rebound. And so this year, and for the life of this forecast, I'm forecasting 1.5% growth, a little bit less than the annual growth over the past 20 years, but we are continuing to monitor this line item and evaluate both the state and the national economic recovery coming out of the pandemic. And so we'll continue to do that. We look at our income tax collection every time we get our quarterly payments. We look at that in significant detail at Finance Committee, and we'll monitor and evaluate and adjust that trend moving forward if we need to. And so the third component of our revenue is state funding, our smallest piece. So about 21% of our total revenue. There was a new model that was adopted by the state. I wish I could tell you that it's generating just an influx of money. That is not happening. We will be flat funded on the new Fair School Funding Plan. It's currently being phased in. That doesn't matter. We're on what's called the guarantee. Even with all of the new parameters, we are not a school district that is a winner in the new school funding formula. And part of that is because of our incredibly strong tax base and our ability to generate local contribution. So we have strong tax base, we have supportive voters, we have a strong income tax collection, and all of that factors into the new school funding formula. And so we will receive the level that we've had for the past number of years. It's about $6 million. There is no forecasted increase over the life of this forecast. And unless something changes significantly at the state level, I can't imagine that will happen in my lifetime, although I wish it would. Interesting is you see just the year over year changes there at the bottom. Most of that is due to the pandemic. So we saw a tiny increase then in the first year of the pandemic, a 5% reduction. Those of us who sit at this table will remember that happened in the spring, right after the pandemic hit. So we got a cut, all public schools got a cut. And then when the state rebounded a little bit, they gave us a little bit of that cut back, but still we're not realizing significant growth. So if there's ever this hope that the state is going to swoop in and dump money on Wyoming and for our students and our facilities, that is probably not going to happen. So, but about 20% of our revenue. So, can you just go back? I'm sorry, one more, or actually probably two more. I just wanted right there. So again, when we think about our overall pot of revenue, we are a locally funded district. 41% real estate taxes, 29% income tax, with just really small portions from some of those other areas. So we are in charge of our own destiny in terms of our revenue. Thanks, Ashley. Okay, so now if we shift to expenditures, so we think about modeling the revenue that we have available to us. The board's job is to take the revenue and use those resources to meet the needs of our kids. And we saw some incredible examples of that on display tonight. And so when we think about how our budget is spent, about 81% of it is in salaries and benefits of staff, because that's what we do. We pay our teaching staff to work with our kids. And so this is the benchmark of public education. It's usually between 80 and 85%. So we're right there. I have some forecasted growth over the life of this forecast that is on trend. So no significant changes from the last time that we looked at this forecast. The next source of expenditure is something that we call purchase services, and that's kind of a funky term, but they are things that it's kind of just like it sounds, though they're services that are not accomplished by folks that we hire as staff members. So we think about things that oftentimes small districts across the state will contract services for things like transportation. So we outsource transportation, a portion of our maintenance and custodial staff, our technology administration, our substitute procurement, and some special education services. That's all of those show up in the purchase services category. And usually there is a cost advantage of doing that in a small district. Also, when we think about things that we purchase, things that you might, fixed costs that you might have in your own home, things like utilities and insurance. Those are all things that we just think about fixed costs to run our buildings and sort of keep the train in motion. And then, we think about supplies and technology, things that our teachers, like stuff, things that our teachers use with our kids every day. That's really only about 3% of our budget. So textbooks, materials and supplies, technology purses, both devices and some infrastructure. We have had some federal stimulus funding that has supported this over the past couple of years. During the pandemic, we needed to have an influx of devices, and we needed to do some infrastructure improvement for wireless, for example, in our buildings. And so very thankful that we did have federal stimulus money available to us in order to accomplish some of those goals. And so that's why you see a little bit of volatility in those line items. And so thinking about our revenue forecast and then the expenditure modeling, it all boils down to our cash balance. And so we as a board and as an administrative team are working against what we like to call our cash balance benchmark. And Kara, do you want to tell them what the benchmark is?
5 million.
5 million, thank you. Our cash balance benchmark is a number that we identified over extensive analysis of both our revenue and our expenditure trends as the indicator that would sort of determine our overall financial health. And so we use that $5 million as a trigger that we need to think about either increasing revenue, reducing expenditures, or some combination of both. And so through our analysis, we determined that that number was important to our ability to continue to meet the cash flow needs of the district. So meet payroll, meet benefits, pay all of the fixed costs. And so as it sits here today, we have a healthy financial position through the end of fiscal year 24. And there are some notes down there at the bottom that are really important notes, though. We are very carefully watching the economic indicators and their impacts on both state and local revenue. We know that the pandemic impacted our state funding. We got a cut in the middle of the year. We know the pandemic is not over. So very carefully watching those trends. We are also watching the inflationary impact on our expenditures. We are being impacted by that today. Supply chain issues, our buildings are having trouble getting something as simple as paper. We will order just copy paper or instructional materials. We will submit the purchase order. We'll be notified immediately back that the price has changed and it's not going down. So we're feeling that inflationary pressure. We are feeling supply chain issues, and so we're trying to adjust accordingly. Again, I mentioned before, we did have some COVID relief dollars that did help us with expenditures during the pandemic. We actually just received for starting this year over the next 3 years, an additional allocation of COVID relief funds. Some of that is designated for learning recovery, working with our building leadership and our teachers to figure out the best way to deploy those resources over the next couple years. And so at this point, given everything that as all of the assumptions in the current forecast, it looks like that we are stretching to 23-24 for the next operating levy in accordance with that cash balance benchmark. But certainly, again, the caveat that we're watching all of the economic indicators that are in play. If anything crazy again happens at the state level, that would shift this planning. If income tax takes a turn that is adverse to what we're modeling, that would impact this forecast. And the impact would be, we'd either be looking at increasing revenue or modifying the expenditures in some other way. Yes.
When we did the levy, I guess it was 16, 17?
17.
May
17.
Okay. What was the original projection?
4 years.
So 21
Mhm.
was when it was projected, like May of 21?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay.
We always run levies in the spring, so,
Yep.
yes, I think now, Ohio's, levy, that would be in March rather than May. They moved it from March, from May to March.
So you're projecting it would be March 24.
It-
Roughly, is that what this is?
March of 23 to collect in 24, because remember, you pass in 1 year to collect starting January 1 the next year.
Okay.
But again, that's that right now the cash balance benchmark could technically defer, run in 24 to collect in 25. But as that cash balance declines, then your millage is going up.
Yeah.
So, that's always the decision making of the board. Do you make a decision, looking at that 5.5 cash, or do you defer another year to get to the 3.9? So those are the decisions. And certainly as we get closer, the beauty of having this tool that is well understood by our board, our finance committee, our union leadership, our administrative team, is that we know all of the key inputs. And so we are quickly able to have conversations and modify our assumptions so that we can model out different scenarios.
I was asking the question probably to celebrate what I think is an extension of the funds which were allocated via the levy in 17. Not in 21 that we had to come back, but at the earliest it would be in 23, which is 2 years beyond what we originally projected.
Right.
Which I'm assuming and understanding is based on the utilization of what we've had, like the wise sort of leverage of that. So I just wanted to, we had a lot of discussion about wise use of resources. I think it's one of our goals.
It
right?
is
One of our
one of
district
our goals.
goals. So I just wanted to.
Ron, do you have
Someone
any
say no.
insight on kind of benchmarking with other districts and how well, first of all, we do an excellent job of this, so kudos to you for managing this, for us. But any benchmarking on how well other districts do in terms of managing? this well?
So we did extensive analysis when we adopted the cash balance benchmark as to what other districts use. And it's very specific to your school culture. So if you are a school district that has a strong commercial industrial tax base, then things look a little different to you. If you are a district that has a significant influx of federal dollars due to a high free reduced lunch population, then your cash flow looks a little bit different. And so it is very specific to us and our reliance on property tax and income tax. And certainly, when we think about having a school district income tax, that is unique. There are less than 200 school districts, so less than a third of school districts across the state have a school district income tax. And so while we celebrate and appreciate the strength of that particular line item, it does provide us with some challenges in times of economic pressure. Because school districts are funded, when you think about the tax structure of Ohio, school districts in a traditional setting, school districts are property tax, which is the most stable, okay? Counties have sales tax. Cities have income tax. That's sort of the overall kind of your baseline governance structure of the tax structure in Ohio. And so we have diversified ours by adding that school district income tax, which again, we celebrate and appreciate in times of strong collection. But during a pandemic, when there's pressure on that line item, then it's cost us a little bit of a challenge. So, but again, we had good collection. We just saw that small decline. We had forecasted a 5% decline as we entered the pandemic, not having really any idea because none of us had lived through that and we had no data to review. So, we have, it's very specific, I guess, to every school district and every school district's, the nuances of every school district's funding structure. Thank you. I know it wasn't as exciting as the
No, it's always.
putting the monarchs on trial, but.
I got to sit you until you're like two.
I do, I think you do.
It's good to hear. Every time, I tell you that, every time I think I write down the same notes, just so I can start to. say it a
It's so
little
good.
bit.
Well, and the other thing that I want to point out, this forecast, which Rhonda mentioned, is updated. It's, you know, we look at it as a finance committee every month. Minutes are available to the public. This 5-year forecast will again be revised and put on the website in May. And you can see the complete trends and, you know, this idea of transparency, we're also aiming for understanding. And so thank you for this work and for explaining it, and, you know, the fact that you keep explaining it because we all need it, so it's good.
It is what I love about the forecast and the assumptions that are always posted along with it, is it gives you a complete picture. There's history, and then all of the assumptions are delineated in the footnotes. So you can have understanding about how we feel as a board, the direction of our major financial components, both revenue and expenditures.
But forecasting is an art form of its own that you do extremely well. Not all treasurers do, so we're lucky. Yes, thank you. We are ready for board committee reports. The finance committee met before this meeting this evening, and I hate to make you start up again, but Mrs. Johnson, you want to?
Sure, every month we take a look at the analytic, which is an internal control tool that we have that just helps us to make sure that we are in line with our biggest expenditure, which is salary and benefits. So we take a look at the analytic. I always like to mention that the finance committee is superintendent, treasurer, 2 board members. This year it's Jeannie and Kara, and then we have 2 representatives from our teacher leadership, that's Smith and Todd Seiler. And so we do this, we meet every month and we review the different components of the 5-year forecast. So we always look at the analytic because that helps us make sure we're on target with salaries and benefits. And then tonight we looked at the key changes that were in the forecast. So we took a little bit deeper dive into a couple of the changes. The biggest one, which was income tax, because that had been revised since our last adoption. And then we also took a look at the technology plan. At our last meeting, we had talked about the permanent improvement plan. And so this time we looked at the technology plan, which was some cross-committee work, because the facility committee looked at that from a sort of an infrastructure facility standpoint. And then we looked at it with the spreadsheet that's allocating dollars that tie into the 5-year forecast. So good cross-committee work that happened in the finance committee tonight. I think that was it.
Yes. I believe a quote I wrote down that you said 80% of our budget is trending just as expected. Oh, I thought that was impressive. I should write it down. You weren't there. You weren't there. All right, thank you. Citizens Advisory Committee. I think you're going to update us, correct?
Yes.
I
I missed, they met on the 4th.
Yeah, we did. We had a meeting on November 4th, and this was a time for each of the study teams to break out into groups and continue their work. And so I thought I would just remind everyone that the different study teams that we have. We have one focused on bullying, and specifically the language we put around that study includes questions like, what are the best practice strategies used by school districts to address bullying incidents in their schools and create a climate in terms of creating climate and culture that reduces the likelihood of bullying behavior? And also, how can we provide restorative practices for all students that help to build a positive climate in our schools? So that's the focus of the work that they're doing. They will continue that work. The plan is for this group to come to the board meeting in March, on March 28th, and present their findings and recommendations to the board at that time.
Okay.
The next study is the standards-based grading practices at the primary level study. And so specifically, their work addresses how do our current primary grading practices compare with other high-performing or highly effective school districts, and how can we best provide feedback to parents on student achievement and growth, and when are letter grades introduced and most effective in reporting student progress. So this one is really about feedback to families on student achievement and growth and success. The plan for this group is to be at our April 25th board meeting, again, to share findings and the recommendations that they're putting forth. And then the final study is primary facilities focused, and it addresses the possible long-term solutions for improved primary facilities that provide optimal learning environments for students at kindergarten through fourth grade levels, and addresses the question of what are the associated costs and benefits for each potential solution that they investigate. And that study is due to come to the board at the May 23rd meeting. So great collaboration with these community members and staff members working on these studies. Each month we continue to do that work.
And one thought I had for the board is, we were talking earlier about the learning from OSBA and some of the things, sort of practices, kind of examples of things that are happening. I'd love to make sure these teams get the benefit of some of that distilled understanding, so that they're aware of some of those places to sort of, I think the bullying comes in March, so there's still some months between now and then, but I know you were talking, care about that sort of practice. With that, just trying to make sure the best of what we saw and experienced there for each of these three areas, that one just stood out to me as one to make sure we make the connections on that. Heather and I are on the team, so if there's content that's not in the document that we have as a summary, that you'd like to make sure it gets included, let's just call them.
I have not put mine up yet.
I'm gonna put mine
I
in
did
soon
too,
too. And
so I'll
hopefully-
do that. I
Yeah.
put ours, or the one, I know it's a different one, but,
And I made a note to myself that potentially at the December planning meeting, we can set aside some time
yeah.
to walk through the things that resonated during those sessions for us.
I went to a literacy meeting on the science of reading, and I think it had some effects both on the primary grading, but also on facilities. They actually revamped the look of their school as they incorporated these new ideas.
Great, like how intertwined a lot of them are, so.
Oh, it's amazing. All right, now we're ready for superintendent committee reports, the belonging committee.
I'll go ahead and share, and anyone can jump, because I know we had participation at the event, and it was brought up during public recognition. Great event. So impressed with the attendance of our community. We had staff members there, we had families there, we had community members there. Incredible turnout. And the goals of the conversation were to share the work that's being done to build a culture and climate of belonging, and then to gain feedback that helps to drive future work in creating this culture that we're striving to do. So we spoke about the three strategies that we're moving forward with, one being student voice, two being professional development around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and three being the work of the Belonging and Inclusion Collaborative. And we talked before about that group of community members and staff members really being reflective of all of the practices in the district, and how can we make sure that those practices are inclusive. And it's work that we are continuing, and that feedback that Rhonda spoke about during public comment is critical to helping to further that work. And so future opportunities will definitely be coming.
Yeah, I was there. I was encouraged by the dialogue, the questions. I thought you all did a great job answering the questions as they were coming up, that from the feedback from the RSVPs, answering the questions. I also thought that it was done in the conversation, the debriefs were done in a very respectful way. And kind of your point, as we get all this information together, that group of folks that were there could be great sounding boards going forward. But there's definitely some strong engagement coming out of that meeting. Absolutely.
Well, we called it community conversations, and that doesn't necessarily mean we're all going to start at the same place nor end at the same place. So there's going to be some changes and differences of opinions, but yes, it was well said. I have a question about one of the things you're talking about. My overall question is where next? What's next? But when you talked about the survey you were doing with students, and you talked about the questions, I know one of the board said, you were just giving us general questions. Were those grade level in some way? I mean, were different questions going to different kids?
As a starting place, no, they were going to students, and then, again, this is just a starting place. And so completely anonymous, looking at initially fourth grade students, eighth grade students, thinking the older students in the grade level will be able to respond to their experience. Knowing that we've been through a pandemic, it's a little bit of a challenge going with younger students who are newer to those buildings because their experience is so varied, especially in the past 20 months. So fourth grade, eighth grade, and then all of the high school. And so we asked questions that really were about the experience that they were having in the school, and are they experiencing belonging, or do they feel that their friends and others in the school are experiencing belonging? And then really the open-ended questions are the two questions that give us great amounts of feedback. And those two questions are, what are we doing well with? What can we celebrate in our school? And where can we grow? And where can we do better? And so it's so powerful, even from a fourth grade perspective, to hear the level to which they think about those questions and the ideas that they have for improving their climate and improving their experience. And really what it comes down to is, do they feel valued, connected, and this sense of belonging that we talk about. And we also, at this conversation, we spoke about this being a never-ending process. As we get better and better and better, we keep reaching out to our students to say, what are we doing well with and what are we not doing well with, and how can we continue to improve the experience for every Wyoming City school student.
One of the things I felt was so effective about the session was there were people in the room who didn't agree, on the topic or the conversation or how we ought to approach the various things, which I think can be great for us as we manage that well, and wisely. Now, there was a conversation at the end on how the behaviors are what we focus on around how we will behave and engage with each other that are respectful and supportive. I think was Lena mentioned, not just from a physical safety, but a psychological and emotional safety that creates a space for kids to learn. So someone mentioned something about a concern around a religious belief and how that might be in conflict with other things. And the conversation was, our beliefs are valued and valuable, and we want to protect those, and we understand they're very different. The behaviors, however, are the things that we are going to agree upon in these sets of discussions that we protect and we agree to regardless of what your belief is, one way or the other. I think that's important because it does then allow for the parental sort of voice in their home and what they value and believe to be present and impacting their student. And then they bring that into this place where the behaviors are very clear and specific. And so I think it goes both ways relative to the value of focusing on what are the behaviors that are inclusion, what are the behaviors that enable safety from a physical, psychological, and emotional that allow for learning to be maximized. And so I don't know how that will go or what way that gets kind of distilled to ground, but that's one of the things I was most excited about. I know there's requests for all of the information to be shared. And one of the questions you don't have to ask right now is, I know we want to be intentional around how we share what we're doing next and what some of the learning was, so that it's constructive for the next steps that we're doing and not just utilized for all the other kinds of discussions that get out and around, which are not constructive to the process that we want to go. So I do understand that will be a consideration.
Yes.
And, I expect that you'll take the space to make the wise decision on how we share what we're sharing, not to not be transparent, but to be productive and informative in how we do that.
And also, it's an evolving thing, and so I think, Ilya is right, that idea of being intentional, but also not forgetting that we do need to share, all that, a lot of feedback is happening, some of which can be acted upon right away, some causes more conversation, there are a lot of different things that result from a lot of the work that's being done, and we, all of us, teachers, administrators, board members, we all get busy actually doing the work, but I do think we need to find those specific ways to update. It's not necessarily, here's the answer, we solved it, we cracked the code, but, just updates and constantly, and, conversation to me implies that it's not just one way, we're going to let you know what's happening, that we want to keep the conversation going in both directions.
And we acknowledge that this is a start. We were hoping that last year we would have been able to engage in these community conversations. We look back 2 years ago and we were going out into the community and saying, what are we doing well with, what are we not, and what are the expectations? At that time, I was asking for the new superintendent. And then the hope was to turn right around and have these more focused conversations on the ideas that surfaced in those initial conversations. Unfortunately, now we're at a time, we paused a little bit because of the pandemic, but happy to be re-engaging in those conversations. And again, it's the beginning of critical work that sometimes is tough because no one's an expert, and we're working together to figure out the best pathway to go.
All right, thank you. Business advisory did not meet. Community engagement. We have a lot to report. We're back at it. I'll start. I attended the Golden Cowboy. I believe you probably got twice as many people as you expected. It was great. Everybody came very excited to see the Rick. That's where we had it. But also, it was one of those days you couldn't have scripted any better because we were sending off the girls to the volleyball. So you had all those empty nester people going outside with all the high school kids, and the energy was just unbelievable. And they were all so excited, saw them off. And then we went back into the Rick to hear all the great things that are happening.
Will you remind everyone the criteria for being in that
For
group?
being a Golden Cowboy, do you want to go over all the details, Mrs. Henke?
Yeah, absolutely. It's Wyoming residents age 60 and over.
That's an extensive list.
Good thing you were here for that. I thought there was more to it. There's a pass involved that you can get that enables you to go to the music, art, drama, I guess sports too.
In season
Home
sports, not
sports.
postseason, but yes, home in season.
So people were very excited. Some people had really good questions, and other people were just right up on what was happening, and they were just excited to see some of the things that we were doing.
When's the next event? Are you planning to?
Yes, we do have another event in the spring. And so there's a theme of getting back to engaging in our community. And so this is a special population of individuals that have unique questions about what's happening in the school district. How can I be a part of that? How can I partner with you if possible? And so we want to have ongoing dialogue. So twice a year, we'll have opportunities to meet with this group. And we're looking forward to opportunities where we can connect them with special events happening in the school. And so in the spring, we're trying to connect them with some work that's being done around the play that is happening in the spring.
So tell your empty nester neighbors.
Yeah.
Right.
Like you said, it doesn't require that they're empty nesters, right? They just have to be 60 years old. I know that's an important, and you have to discuss the size and the magnitude of that population. So the discussion we had earlier about leveraging the WIC is what that is. I mean, so you're already doing that.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware about that since I wasn't able to be at the meeting yet. It's already happening. So.
Don't rub it in.
No, I'm jealous. Like I want to be a Golden Cowboy.
I would say some other things. I'm gonna keep it going.
Okay.
The vaccination clinic, which was such a hit that you get to have more of them. So that was awesome. The send-offs, this Tuesday, like you're saying, the girls and boys soccer send-offs. I love that. I mean, clearly I wasn't there. I don't have a primary student anymore, but the primary family math night, like just to see what that looked like was awesome. Didn't you guys say like 200 people? 300.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that felt high. I'm like, oh, that's awesome.
Where did you put 300 people?
We're at the middle school.
It's up all around the first floor of the middle school. So it flows from
Wow.
the cafeteria into the learning commons, even the art gallery, and down.
What I love about that too, that gives, some people have older siblings,
Right.
but it is one opportunity for the younger kids to start, getting familiar. That's so cool.
And I think the energy was so high because of that. I think anytime that they get to go into that next building, the eyes are wide.
Yeah,
Excited.
that's fun.
Great.
Obviously, community conversations.
Yeah.
another one prior to the community conversations was the event, starting at Waco Co, the edge of town, with Deuces, who's a 2011 Wyoming grad. You guys remember we did this in August, but we had the event at starting at Waco Co, and we had about, I think, like 20 or 30 Wyoming residents and others came to do the walk through the edge of town. And instead of people using earbuds, we actually had two big speakers that were projecting down Wyoming Avenue and on Oak and around that. And we're just kind of getting the informal feedback from folks. They actually, first of all, they could hear very well, the speakers, but they really thought it created more of a communal experience
Absolutely.
as people were listening together to Deuces and his experience. So it was excellent. I think it blew his expectations away. It was a great event. Something he wants to continue doing once the weather gets a little warmer. It was a great night. It was a nice night for it.
Because I had done it earlier and we each had our own phone and yes, we were never all in the same place.
Yeah,
This was great. We
We're
were
laughing.
laughing.
Yeah, that's how we were
Did you
holding
count,
ours.
Lauren?
Yeah, I think it's 20.
Okay, see, she's usually such a good counter.
Well, in the play, which I didn't get to go to, but I heard was wonderful. So,
The high school did Anne Frank.
yes.
Any others? All right, then I
There
will.
was an election, that was good.
There was an election. Oh, we won't soon forget. Yes.
Well, the other one that I was gonna mention, I'm sorry, I didn't know we skipped. Wyoming School Foundation meeting is ongoing and regular. We talked earlier about the impact that that group has in helping connect people who are giving private funds to things like the Dan Jones Innovation Center. Last year, they actually far exceeded their goal for fundraising, in the calendar year, doing some different things, pushed because of quarantine and COVID. So looking to have another, strong year of support for the school system. Really energized group, people who have a strong sense of ownership for Wyoming schools, and they're celebrating a lot of things that happen on the athletic side, but it's just an energy that just builds when those kinds of things are happening. And it's pretty neat. I remember seeing the bus go by the middle school, and my daughter talking about, well, she got to get out of some class to go do it, but they were like just cheering the whole deal. I was envisioning what it would be like to be on that bus, like going to do this thing and having what feels like the entire community, cheering for you. And I was excited that it was both equally for the women's team as the boys team, and it felt neat to me. So that group was discussing and celebrating that.
Absolutely. All right, facility committee.
Well, we met on the 4th. I guess that was the one that I was on Zoom with you all, right? But are you okay that I'm doing?
Go for it.
Okay. So we talked about planning to partner with the city to create enclosures for dumpsters and portable restrooms at both Hilltop and Vermont. So it was great. Jan had visuals for us, that you can think about at Hilltop, if you're familiar with that, those dumpsters kind of fall on the parking spaces. And then we talked a few years ago about individuals who are using the baseball fields and at those schools because of the fields. Correct. And the individuals need to use the restrooms sometimes in season. So what that looks like and getting those enclosed. You all went over the 5-year technology plan. And then we looked at recent security camera audits and are looking for grant funds to support the necessary replacements of those. So I keep saying it, I know it's a new committee, but how it all ties into all of it, and that just the way that you all are starting to look at it and what needs to be replaced when, and how we can look at what that looks like to integrate the studies of CAC and all these have been very helpful for me to kind of hear and look at it. You were in person on that one.
No, I think it was in consideration of the people who live around those places that the restroom situation was going to be enclosed and be a lot better. So it seemed weird to be excited about enclosing dumpsters and a bathroom, but
It's gonna look great.
that's good for our community.
Is there anything
It's not the financial forecast or anything. but-
Right.
That's not that exciting.
And another opportunity to partner with the city.
Absolutely. No planning and goal setting meeting, policy review, if you all don't mind, are coming up later, so we'll talk later. And no student achievement. All right.
No student achievement, but can I connect information
Oh,
that
please
I think
do.
is connected to that? And that is an update just on the strategic planning work. So we had another conversation with our strategic planning team, continuing to move forward. And during that conversation, very interesting discussion of education for Wyoming students in the past, in the present, and in the future. And the discussion revolved around what does success look like now, and what does success look like in the future? And that's really the work of the team right now, is defining success now and in the future. And so that was an engaging conversation as we looked at students who have been here, previous to the last 5 to 10 years, and then the kids that are graduating with us this year, and then the kids that we don't know what education will look like in 12 to 13 years ahead. So great conversation. And those will continue. We've got, I'm not sure what our December meeting is, but we've got another December meeting planned for those conversations to continue.
All right, so at least twice a year, we get together with policies. This is going to be our first read of board policies. Everybody left. It's just getting exciting.
Everyone's home to watch it on Zoom. Everyone's home to watch it on Zoom.
Now's your time, now's your opportunity.
Don't sneak out now. This is when it gets lengthy. Sorry. All right, so we're gonna go through the policies.
We're not offended.
This is our first read. Ask questions now or within the next month, because then at our next meeting, we will adopt these policies. We're gonna all chit chat about them, but I got the first one. Oh, good. Public participation at board meetings, which is 0169.1. This basically is our policy. It's been updated. It's been a little bit reorganized as well. So if you compared it to the old one, there are some things in different places. It's meant to allow for the open forum, which we have all agreed we absolutely want at each meeting, so that would continue. And it's just a little more clear about how that would be organized. There really aren't big changes. It's more, it's in a different place, but we talked about at a meeting, people may participate in the public recognition. We added one more group, and that is those who own businesses within the school district. It seems like that.
I thought that was good.
To delineate those people as well. And that actually was a suggestion given to us by another school district. We talked about if this also kind of lines up with some recent court cases to make that as equally as clean and as up to date. So unless you have a question, it pretty much is what we've always done, just a little bit clearer and just a little more reorganized.
The 3 minutes.
Oh, and the 3 minutes. Thank you for reminding me of that, because I did want to talk about that. It was suggested that we actually come up with a time. So we chose the 3 minutes. We thought that worked out. It has been working out pretty well. And
I was wondering how that felt. Did I just make that up, that we were just saying it, but it wasn't in our
it's
policy?
been, the policy before has been 30 minutes divided as
That's
you
what it
please,
was, yes.
which we chose the 3 minutes, but of course, if there are 100 people who want to speak, then your 30 minutes is, so, and we've kind of ignored it. So in
Yep.
other words, we've been going against our own policy. All right, so Ashley, I believe you're going to talk about 1530.
Yes, if you will remember, teachers, actually last June, we adopted a policy for teachers to move from OTES 1.0 to OTES 2.0, really just an update of the state evaluation system. This policy is to do the same thing with principals. Principals currently are in OTES 1.0, and principals will be trained in February and then move into a system of OTES 2.0 for next year, meaning how they are evaluated in the administrative role. So really, this is just language to mirror kind of what our teachers already have, just in a principal way through OTES.
All right, the next one is on weapons, 1617, but it actually plays up with 3217 and 4217. So I'm going to do three at one time. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, we're going out of
She's
order.
being efficient. She's trying to help us.
All right, so basically, a lot of this came about, it's a new generalized policy, but it came about, there was a court case in, actually just north of us here in Butler County, Madison School District. And some conversation about whether or not people in the board could designate people within the building to be, to carry weapons. And so what we're saying is that while Ohio law permits boards of education to designate concealed carry weapons without violating any criminal statutes, we continue to prohibit guns in the school zone in this district. And if we were to suddenly change, then there is an option here that anyone you designated is allowed to have a gun would have to have gone through, I believe it's called peace officer training. Our peace officer is not here at the moment. So specifically, we remain as we have that we do not allow guns in our school zone. All right, Ashley, then I'm gonna, you'll have College Credit Plus.
If you remember, College Credit Plus, also called CCD, is the opportunity for our really 7th through 12th graders, although most of our students are probably in the 9th through 12th grade range to take advantage of that, but it does extend down to middle school. That allows them the opportunity to attend a college university or go to a college university, take coursework, and receive both a high school credit and a college credit simultaneously, so dual credit essentially. Basically, the major caveat of this particular policy is that now you have to be remediation free before you are able to take CCP coursework. So before we allow a student to venture into a college environment and take a course that is rigorous at the college level, we want to make sure that they are meeting all the benchmarks of their grade point average, remediation free on their entrance test, and even some other measures like state testing and things of that nature. There does allow for this in the policy a building override. So there could be that if we see a student who maybe doesn't meet those thresholds, but we still think is mature enough and academically able to pursue those entrance, we can have a building override drill after that.
Would that situation be primarily if someone, I was thinking about someone who may be academically challenged in a given area, but they're going to Charlotte Oaks or some other place to go do something that's in an area of their strength. So they're still working through whatever the mediation thing is at the high school level. They are capable and ready to handle this level of work that gets them college credit. Is that what you envision?
Absolutely. So let's say a GPA is below 3.0, but you have a strength, right? Let's say, your GPA overall is below that threshold, but you excel in English, you excel in math, you excel in arts, anything of that nature. We could allow you to go and take and capitalize on that strength at a more difficult level at college university.
All right, thank you. You want to do the next one, blended learning?
Blended learning, we have always had a policy around blended learning. Blended learning is when we allow students to have a different environment than a traditional setting all day long. So an example of that would be a zero bell, like a zero bell roll call, where 2 days of the week they have online learning versus traditional in-person learning. Anytime you have a class like that, whether it's one single instance, like we do with zero bell over oral comm, or an entire school, like we did during COVID in a hybrid situation, you have to fill out a blended learning declaration that is due by July 1st of each year. And currently we submit that for the one class. There's really no change in this particular policy. It's really just a reorganization of that opening paragraph that you see that just explains about how that delivery of instruction looks in that policy.
Seems like a new definition that takes into the effect what we've just all
A little more
experienced through the COVID.
It's true, that's why I was looking at it differently, I think, from when we looked at it before, because then I was like, how often is that happening versus, because sometimes you can read it making it sound like I would like to do online learning, but you're saying it still has to be a specific class, or when we shifted more as a district, not an individual case.
And actually, the year of the pandemic, we submitted 2. So we had submitted the zero bell one, and then you can't have 2 on file at the same time. So we had to retract that one and submit the pandemic one instead.
Right. Okay, that makes more sense.
All right, I'm going to have you skip down to 5111.02, which is equal opportunity for military children. Obviously, this affects other districts in Ohio, not really us. We don't necessarily have a lot of military in and out, not being near an air base or anything like those in Dayton and other places. Basically, what it says is that children who are coming into your district through the military, as military families, they may start their learning via technology before they actually are physically living in your school district. So
Does that have to be a blended learning? I'm not even very funny.
I guess it would be a blended learning then. Now that you say that, yes.
You just said it with your thing going up. It was like,
Oh,
is that-
oh, yeah. She is correct. It would be blended learning.
Yeah, I didn't know whether to laugh. I was like, it was gonna be a pity laugh, but.
Okay, 5,200 on attendance is actually, the change comes is as they, at the end, if you go to the end of the, excuse me, the end of the policy, it's actually taking out some of the COVID references that were put in there in the time of COVID. Remember, we had a change in our attendance policies during that period, and this is bringing us back into where we were before. It reflects a House Bill 110. And there is one other specific thing about college visitation too, which is also not terribly different from what we already have in place. But I guess for other districts in the state of Ohio, it is. All right, next one is 5336, the care of students with diabetes. I think we discussed not including this, but obviously we're still.
I had that we rejected it.
I had that we
was
had
just-
rejected it.
That
See,
should just be crossed out.
I made my rejection.
Yeah, mine says rejected all.
Oh, thank you. All right, that
I
makes
just
me
crossed
feel
out.
better.
And by rejection,
What, yeah.
It's not gonna be, it's a policy that was offered to us as other districts in Ohio are accepting it, and it did not seem germane to what we need here, so we're not taking it.
Even though we're providing.
Well, we're not providing, the parents are providing in our district the insulin for,
It's glucagon. It's not, but it's.
Yeah.
the medication.
so we're rejecting this because essentially we're not taking on the responsibility of providing that.
Right.
to
Providing
something.
the parents
Yeah.
are doing that.
Oh, okay, but I'm sorry, but we are providing the care of it during the day. I mean, I guess a lot of the way that it reads on it, we're doing all.
It was mainly
For that
related
option.
to the supply of the glucagon.
Okay.
Whether that's
Yeah.
something the schools would be purchasing or whether that's something that the families would be providing.
And the way I read it was interesting, just thinking of like epinephrine, how you could get like a backup of epinephrine, but parents were still providing it. That's the way I was reading it, is it was just like one backup. But you're saying the way that this was reading is more like everybody.
It's still like a single medication kind of a thing. I mean, so it's not completely unlike that, but it is something that the parents are then providing, bringing to the school, and it's not something that the school is maintaining.
Right.
Those supplies of that.
And the supplies like the EpiPens that we have are technically are for if an emergency pops up with a student that is not carrying his own EpiPen.
Or maybe
a
didn't know
situation you
they
didn't know.
didn't know they had an allergy.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, I was
Which
just
would
like
not
thinking that-
necessarily work its way with diabetes, that same direction. All right, we are at 5350, which is student mental health and suicide prevention. There is an act called SAVE, which I was going to try to remember what that stood for. It's students, and I'll work on it and get back to you on that. Basically, this is effective in March, a new item where the ODE has told us we have to include and develop a curriculum, I guess, added to our health classes. And it will be on suicide awareness and the prevention thereof. We have to submit a program, and this is all through the Ohio Department of Education. We have to, if you look right in the middle of this policy, there are 3 items that we need to be covering now: suicide awareness and prevention, safety training and violence prevention, and social inclusion. And this has to be provided in terms of to all students grades K through 6, beginning in school year 23-24.
I'm saying that because we're not doing that typically, because we're doing that in 7 through 12 now, and that's why it's specifying K-6. That was my one like question of maybe it's just my misreading it.
So you see through the standards, you see reference to all of those things,
Mhm.
maybe not quite that explicit. And so I think pulling that out and just making sure that those are definitely included in kind of your health standards all the way to through 12. Instead of just a reference or maybe some inference in the reading.
Okay.
So it could be this, you could say the state is saying, you may be looking at this 7-12 we're suggesting.
Earlier. Yes, that's what, okay.
And SAVE means safety and violence education. students.
Thank you.
I'm safety and violence.
Education students.
Right. It says 2023-24, the district will include health education for students in grades 6 through 12 in the following topics. So these three that are here means we have to do that for 6 through 12. Is that 1 hour of each of them or 1 hour where the three of those are covered?
I think you have the flexibility to decide that. Normally, the state would prefer 1 hour of each of them. But it could be a team order.
And then is social inclusion essentially similar things that we're trying to do with our belonging and inclusion stuff? Or what does that mean?
I think you could tie it to belonging. I think it could be related to bullying. I think it can be related to even like mental health awareness around social issues. So I think that's all tied, and I think it's just depending on what angle you kind of teach that through. It could be PBIS, it could be our health curriculum. It even could be in more social interactions like counselor corner, like you see at primary level. So at some point, we will be seeing a curriculum of some sort that we will then need to approve according to this, and then a training program that prepares the teachers as well as whatever the program is
Yes.
in place for the children. All right, thank you. The next one after that is 5464 Tim. I think you were going to take this one. Yes, early graduation. We have always had a policy regarding early graduation from high school. A few students have taken advantage of that over the years. When you want to be an early graduate, you do have to fill out a WAP, a written acceleration plan, not to be confused with a WEP, which is a written education plan. So a WAP basically sits down and talks about why a student would want to accelerate and explore graduating early. Are there any advantages of that, disadvantages of that, and then how do you make a plan to make sure that the student is successful in the timeline? A WAP is only good for 6 weeks of the trial, meaning you can enter into a WAP, explore early graduation perhaps for 6 weeks. If it doesn't work out, you can go back to the traditional assessment system. In this particular policy, really the thing that I would draw your attention to is under the early high school graduation advanced learners. We actually took the option in that second paragraph to have changes in a student schedule will occur at the start of a grading period rather than a semester. And the reason for that is we want to make sure that we don't keep a student waiting for a whole semester if they need to make a change to complete that lap or to explore graduation earlier. Just gives kids more options instead of them kind of having them in a holding pattern until the end of the semester.
What is WAP stand for again?
LAP is written acceleration plan.
Written.
Acceleration plan.
You will be quizzed. 5516 is about student hazing, and, I guess that is me, sorry. This replaces an existing policy that we already had. It's meant mostly for universities, the concept of hazing. But it was suggested that we consider it because there are definitions in this, as you can tell when you look through. And information about coverage and information about how you would notify families that could indeed be used by us in a K-12 environment. But as written, it was written mostly for universities. Okay, and the next one is 5630.01, and that is PBIS. This one was a healthy one, yes. It puts us in line with state policy changes. And once more, this one truly does have pages of definitions that would become the framework for any policy changes or any other communications we would have.
I mean, it is so much more in depth than our PBIS of giving stickers at the elementary school. You know, how like this started for like your caring child.
Yeah, it also looks at one of the
one of the items added in talks about physical restraint.
Yeah.
And so that is,
Yeah.
something I think of in terms of changing.
All of our staff receive physical restraint and seclusion training at the beginning of the year for public schools.
Right. Is there anything in this policy that changes the discipline in the handbooks, like, or is this just so general?
I think you can always overlay PBIS on top of discipline. And what I mean by that is instead of something as simple as stating it in the negative, you turn it into the positive, and how you just phrase discipline. I think restorative practices fit into PBIS as well. And so that is an ongoing discussion, particularly as we continue to look at handbooks. And so, yes, I think it's a nice overlay to encompass over that to make sure it is all of the umbrella. And you're really trying to do those encouragement and accentuate the positive rather than focus on the display.
Yeah, you can see the
shift.
shift that this policy, which I really agree with, is
Correct.
making, and I just want to make sure that I know that you all are working on making sure our discipline reflects this shift, so.
Right back into the restorative practice.
It does. All right, thank you. Rhonda, you have a few coming up here. 6114.
Yeah, 6114, cost principal spending of federal funds. There's some expanded language under selected items of cost and whether it's direct or indirect. Our policies are in compliance with all of these, so just firming up the language in 6114 in compliance with the federal regulations on federal funding. 7300 has some language about disposition of unused school facilities. So across the state, there were some buildings where they wanted to dispose of the building, but it wasn't being in. Only a portion of it was used for instruction. This doesn't apply to us, but is in compliance with the law requiring disposition of unused school facilities. So really minor change. I can't imagine if that would ever apply to us, but nonetheless, the policy complies with it. 7450 talks about inventory and how we are tracking equipment, and that's a good change there. Then I think 8330 moves on.
Yeah, 8330 is student records. This was revised due to another law change. Basically, it's very similar to what we have, with one big change that comes right kind of in the middle of the policy that says that student email addresses can be given to military recruiters who come to your school. However, they can't walk out with something. They can only use it within the building. I think that's everything there. But that's in, that goes with the law.
And that reminds me, because if you remember the graduation requirements for the class of 2023 military, enrollment in the military is a pathway for graduation, and so that's probably why they're allowing that particular part of it.
Thank you for that reminder, Doc.
All right, 8400 is on school safety. It creates a threat assessment team that needs to be in place by next year. There will be some training through both TSA and Secret Service will offer some training, and it needs to be added to our school safety policy. So we will have a threat assessment team. I know. I don't want
It's
to
sad that it's a necessity, but I'm grateful.
Yeah,
That's just another measure to.
another way to keep it safe.
Thankful for it.
Exactly. 8462 is on student abuse and neglect. This also is a revision. It reflects the changes in the approach that the Ohio Department of Education is taking, specifically as to who has to be trained. And you see in the new policy, there's a long list of pretty much everybody: nurses, teachers, counselors, school psychologists, mental health providers, and administrators who work in the district's elementary, middle, and high schools. And the in-service program includes school safety, violence prevention, including human trafficking, content use, suicide awareness and prevention of child abuse, substance abuse, promotion of positive youth development, and a review of an earlier policy that on bullying. So we will be doing some changing, or additions, I guess, not changes, additions to our training
Was
program.
there something on this one? I just wrote to myself, K-6 assault prevention. Why did I do that? Like a question mark? Was there some different sort of training K-6, or maybe I mixed up my policies when I was reading it? Because now I don't see it at all. All right, well, I'll write it down. Do you see it? I didn't know. Okay, I read it online and then, oh, thank you. Oh, it's because it was before the red, thanks, Susie. So it was just on there.
And
All
this-
students in grades K-6. And is that kind of similar to my previous question in that maybe we're doing things for the older kids, so that's to be comprehensive?
And
for
then
all
this
of
would make this policy in tune with the earlier policy that we talked about tonight, when they are all accepted.
them? For everybody? Yeah, okay.
All right, transportation is 8600, and this has to do with transporting non-public school students, which that is not, if I'm correct, it's called payment in lieu. We choose that alternative as opposed to running a special bus for students outside of our, who live in our district but don't.
Oftentimes the families who requesting that meet the criteria for the determination of payment of the law. So the state made some changes in that, and so this policy incorporates the changes that were most recently made in the state. Okay, but they did mention if an individual ended up being homeless as well, so I'm like,
And we have provisions for that as well.
okay,
We do that on a, and that's happened every year for us, that we end up partnering with another district for transporting homeless students.
okay. I just wondered, I was like, how is that working and how are we making sure that kids?
It works in a number of different ways, depending on the circumstance, yeah.
All right, Rhonda, 8651.
Non-routine use of school buses. Of course, we as a district don't own any school buses, so this applies to our contracted transportation services and just outlines how things would work if we had the non-routine use of school buses. A good example that we talked about during the meeting was years ago, we had the emergency at the high school and we had some the high school students come over to the middle school. We then used our school buses to take all sorts of students over the course of that event. So non-routine always applies to just non-regular routes.
And the last one, 8740, bonding.
There was a change in the law that allowed a school district to move away from a bond and instead use an insurance policy. This time, the bond is in alignment with contract. So right now, we're still using the bond option, but the insurance policy option is also available. This is a change in the law.
Thank you. All right, may I have a motion to approve the first read of these policies? So moved. Second? Second. And may I have a roll call?
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. G? Yes. Mrs. Dollar?
Yes.
Mrs. Broderick?
Yes.
Mr. Buckner?
Yes.
Thank you. We're ready for a treasurer's report.
Feel like didn't I do that already? Don't you feel like you did it?
You ready for me, Jeannie?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Item A, approval of the minutes from the meetings on October 25th and November 10th. Item B, approve the statement of revenues and expenditures for month end October 31st. Item C, accept with appreciation this extensive list of donations. Item D, the appropriation adjustments for the month of November. Item E, approval of the 5-year forecast as submitted. And item F, the annual request to approve the resolution authorizing to file the modified tax budget. Item G is approval of the report, please.
All right, thank you. May I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second. May I have a roll call?
Mrs. G?
Yes.
Mrs. Aller?
Yes.
Mrs. Broderick?
Yes.
Mr. Buckner?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. The superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you. So we have several personnel items. The first is a recommendation to approve new personnel. And so these are for the positions of primary educational aide and the middle school and high school student auditorium worker. Number two is a recommendation to approve unpaid leave for several of our staff members. Number three is a recommendation to approve kindergarten intervention individual to provide support to our students, our kindergarten students who have been identified through our review of data. So we talked a lot about reviewing data, and so we've identified students who would be in need of receiving some intervention services, and this is a great example of using ESSER funds to support our student needs, especially for our youngest learners. Number four is a recommendation to approve extended year services for individuals who would qualify for that support. Number five, recommendation to approve home instruction services up to 25 hours. Number six, a recommendation to approve additional days for COVID-19 work, and that's through our district nurse. Number seven, recommendation to approve an additional van driver. Number eight is a recommendation to approve this non-athletic supplemental contract. So we're excited about this opportunity coming back for students. Number nine, a recommendation to approve changes to this non-athletic supplemental contract. Number 10, we have these fall event workers that we are looking to approve for their support through fall events. Number 11 is a recommendation to approve Edgenuity, Edgenuity training. And so this is that instructional tool that we've identified for middle school math support. And these individuals are being trained to utilize that. Again, another good example of using ESSER funds to help students, and these students are identified through the use or through the look at data as we've been focused on for the past several months. Number 12 is a recommendation to approve athletic supplemental contracts for all those you see listed there. And then final personnel item is number 13, recommendation to approve this change in the athletic supplemental contract for high school girls varsity basketball assistant coach.
Why was it originally 4.5%?
I'm sorry?
You know why it was originally 4.5%?
It was split with somebody.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It was split between two people.
The job.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was the role. Yeah, that's.
So
what the
all
role
falling
is.
under
Now
one
it's all-
individual now. And then item B, another exciting opportunity, and this is the middle school, the 8th grade trip to Chicago. And so they are scheduled to leave May 15th. Comes at a fitting time. Our high school seniors are coming back from DC right now. So we're looking forward to this opportunity coming back to our middle school kiddos.
Okay. All right, thank you. May I have a motion to approve the superintendent's report? May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call?
Mrs. Dollar?
Yes.
Mrs. Barker?
Yes.
Mr. Buckner?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. G? Yes.
Thank you. All right, superintendent's update.
Okay, I just wanted to reflect a little bit on a previous conversation we had. November 10th, we had a planning meeting that we set up, and it was specifically designed to have some conversations around our pandemic plan. If you recall, back in October, we noticed that the levels of COVID in our community were going down. They were trending down. We were excited about that change. So we thought, let's pull back and open up the conversation on November 10th. So we did that, and we specifically spoke about the possibility of a change in our masking plan for high school students. That was the first consideration we were looking at, and then we opened up a conversation around K-8, and is there an opportunity for our K-8 students? And at the time, we said that based on the low case numbers we had in our high school, the access to vaccines that our high school students had, and really the ability of our high school students to monitor their own environment, we thought if anyone was potentially, if there was a potential to change the masking plan, it would come first at our high school levels. Because the younger students have not had access to vaccines, they're higher case numbers. And so really we focused on the high school conversation. Met recently with the high school staff, spoke about that possibility. They had some great feedback, and one of the things they spoke about was the senior trip to DC. And, it was in that conversation that we thought, let's pause a little bit. What we saw was the COVID levels actually start to trend upward. They got down to a point where they were about 17 new cases per 100,000 in Hamilton County. They started trending up, but currently at, I want to say 27.7, I think it was today. And so one of the reasons we decided to pause on any type of a change was because of the DC trip, but then we knew that we were going into Thanksgiving, the Thanksgiving break for all of our high school families. And so we thought, let's wait until after Thanksgiving break. And we know that during Thanksgiving break, there are large gatherings. And so let's decide to wait at least a week after Thanksgiving break to then, again, review all the data that we continue to look at to determine if it's the right time to potentially have a change. And so I think we're a little bit out from making any kind of a change. I think what we'll do is in the week we come back from spring break, that's way down the road. Thanksgiving break, we will continue to look at all of the data that we've continued to review. So that's COVID transmission rates locally here, that is number of cases, that's vaccination information, that's legislation, that's what guidance would say. And so especially as things are moving and COVID levels are trending up, we're going to pause and just continue to reflect on that information. So that's the first update, is I wanted to make sure that I provided you with some background on further conversations that we had at the high school level. I don't know if there are any questions about that.
At one, you mentioned before, tonight you mentioned that the high school students are able to monitor their own environment. What does that mean in terms of like?
Well, it's really just thinking about when high school students go into a classroom, they're more equipped to look at their surroundings and say, I should sit over here, or I might want to put my mask on in this circumstance. It's just with age comes the ability to take into account their surroundings and make individual choices.
Manage their choice.
Their choice for
Concept of the
themselves.
surroundings.
Exactly.
Not to monitor or manage the surroundings.
Correct.
Choices of others.
Correct. Okay. Good question. Tuesday, any updates? We have, we've got 3 vaccination clinics coming up. They're weekly. I don't have the dates on hand. I don't know if you know the dates.
Yep.
Okay.
So we had one last week. The next one is tomorrow from 12 to 3 at the Civic Center. They're all at the Civic Center. It's a great opportunity for us to partner with our city around these. So then the week after Thanksgiving, that's on November 29th, and that is from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. again. And then December, it's the Tuesday of that week, I think it's the 7th, is 2 to 5 p.m. So we've got them for 4 weeks in a row.
It's a bit for perspective, for folks who who went to the first vaccine clinic, their second shot really should be in that December time.
Yeah, so we always have that December 8th one scheduled to be that 3 weeks later for the Pfizer. But then there was overwhelming interest, and we got Hamilton County to come back out. So,
Great.
But then do you have to do the follow-up? No, you don't have to. Well, then people, if they come to this next one for their first, just be encouraged to go elsewhere for their second, or what does that look like for?
So vaccination clinics now, and especially the ones here that Hamilton County, they are bringing formulations of everything.
Okay.
So, I mean, there could be people that are here that are getting their second dose, because
Yes,
they've gotten
that's
their somewhere else. They could be getting the J&J, they could be, so there are a lot of different, very personal situations as to what shot or vaccine they could be getting for any different reason. So the clinics here accommodate all of those needs, but it's not that difficult either to get, to find other locations that provide all of those things also. I mean, the hard part, I think, sometimes for Hamilton County clinics is the hours. They don't, they like to finish up by 4. It took a lot of cajoling to get them to stay till 5 even here. So every Tuesday, they are at Pal Crossley Y at Winton, but those daytime hours also. So we just want to make it as easy as we possibly can and accessible here in Wyoming, but there are a number of other ways to access it.
Thank you for having them. And now that Booster's got approved for everyone. I'm curious if more people will come for that.
We haven't, so we have moved with tomorrow's clinic to recommending pre-registration. And we do
okay.
have a number of pre-registered people, so I think tomorrow will be another big number day. Tomorrow, because they just decided to move to that, they say they will still be taking walk-ins. So we'll kind of see how that goes. The clinic for the 29th, they have put that into Armor Back, so that is, people can go ahead and pre-register for that now. The one on the 7th has not been in there yet.
Okay.
We could jolt them to bring more people to give shots so that the time is.
So we have tried, and I will say that the fire chief and I were very interested in getting trained as much as we could so that we could jump in to help out in those things. So we went through the training today. That was kind of a last minute thing that Hamilton County was able to put together. But in that, I took that opportunity to ask, tell me about staffing or whatever. And it, I'm a little, I mean,
No.
no. I mean, so we were pushing, and really the idea for us was that Dennis and I would just kind of jump in if needed, but now it's become, we will be registering. So what we're gonna just do everything that we possibly can to get exposed.
Do you need more?
I know, like, so.
So if you, so because Dennis and I will now be working the front desk, we will not be able to monitor the line and answer questions. So if anybody would be interested or could get there to help just work the line and answer questions and explain things, that would be great.
Is there training required for that, or?
Working the line is not, there is no training for that. That would just be like, how can I help you, or how can I walk you through different things? I mean, and maybe like ferrying questions to fire chief and myself.
It's really like what we did at the first one.
Yeah.
I missed that. Okay.
So thank you. To
Thank
have
you
those
for that.
ongoing
Yeah.
opportunities
Yeah.
is a big deal.
A lot.
Thank you.
Well, I saw in the email too that you, I don't know if people caught it, but you really did put a link that people could look at, not just these clinics, but all the
Right.
different places people can go to get whatever they need in the series. So thank you. That's appreciated.
So where is it again tomorrow? 12 to 3.
So they're all at the
They're all-
civic center.
All right, thank you.
And then the other thing that I would just highlight is, again, it's nice to get back to some of the traditions that we have here in our school district. So our DC trip, our seniors are on the way back right now. Do we know when they're due in?
We get in between 4 and 6, depending.
Between 4 and 6. So
Depending on
they're
how
right
you're-
in the middle
how
of
you're
the
that much
long.
Or
haul.
6 a.m.
Yes, yes.
There was
And
one
so-
year they didn't get home until.
Have we
9.
heard how it's going?
It's been a great trip. It's been a great trip. And I think, I'm not sure what the weather was yesterday or today, but the weather's been, it's been cold, but it's been good weather. And it's been a great experience. So can't wait to hear about it from the kids when they come back. As a parent, I'm also excited about an opportunity that the middle school just recently had. They had the 7th and 8th grade dance. As a parent, I was only allowed a few minutes to get in there. There were strict rules around my attendance. So I got in, got out, yes, managed to sneak a few pictures, but it was wonderful. And so the experiences that our middle school students have had, our high school seniors that we're talking about, have been wonderful. And really just want to give a shout out to our staff members and the incredible efforts that they've made to be part of the excitement around those things. They're right next to kids and enjoying those experiences with kids. When I was over at the middle school, it was phenomenal. The setup and the number of staff members that were there was exciting, and that matters to our students. They love to experience those things with our staff members.
I know, I think about the
Great.
teachers that go on these overnight trips and they're excited about it. You guys get excited
Yeah.
and it means so
It
much
does.
to the kids.
It really does.
It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. And so just one additional example of going above and beyond and celebrating alongside of kiddos. And so we've got Thanksgiving break coming up and hoping that everyone, our students, our staff, our families, take time to just relax with families. And everyone deserves that, and hopefully everyone will really be able to get some good rest after a tough but successful and productive first part of the year. That's it.
Very true. All right, thank you. With that, I guess we are ready to adjourn. May I have a motion to do so?
I move.
And a second. May I have a roll call?
Mrs. Broderick?
Yes.
Mr. Buckner?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. G?
Yes.
Mrs. Aller?
Yes, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.